When I got to the office, the cops were already there. Too many for just a run-of-the-mill break-in, I thought to myself. As I opened the door, I heard someone growl my name.
Syntax.
I didn't have to look up. I knew it was Sturgis. That was bad. Captain Sturgis was the old man of homicide at HQ. His voice sounded like someone trying to eject a 45 meg SideQuest disc before it stopped spinning.
Before you come in, well, I gotta tell you, it ain't pretty.
Sturgis, tell me it's not Stella. Always worried when Stella worked late, doing my paperwork, fixing up the place. God knows what the office would look like without her. If it was her, I'd never be able to forgive myself.
No, Jack. It's not Stella. It's your partner, Norton. Seems someone was waiting for him when he came in this morning. People in the next office heard the ruckus, and they called us.
How bad?
Very. Someone stuck his head in a Mac floppy drive. He was still hanging on when the boys in blue arrived. They tried hitting eject, kept rebooting, but nothing would work.
Geez, Sturgis, why didn't you try a paperclip? You just stick it in that little hole beside the drive.
Really? Thanks. I'll have to remember that.
Great. Really great. What the hell do they teach those guys at the academy these days? Don't they know there are real techno-villains out there?
Yeah, sure, Syntax. Listen, you could help yourself a little on this one. The guys from Forensic couldn't find a damn thing here. I mean, nothing. The place is empty. No furniture, not a scrap of paper, zero. Except for Norton and that old Quadra 950.
Sturgis was right. The place was absolutely spotless, except for a gurney with a black tarp that hinted at the form of a man with a large, all-too-regular shape at the top end. I fumbled in my pocket and found a paperclip, which I handed to one of the attendants. Small hole, right of the disk slot. My mind was spinning like a wobbly old hard drive. What the heck happened here? I moved toward the window and took a long gaze. You know, the kind you take when your hard drive crashes with 50 hours of work on it you haven't backed up. After a few minutes, I looked down at the ledge. Man, even the dead flies were gone. I knew Stella hadn't picked them up. She hates bugs. This was strange. It was as if someone had backed up the whole place onto a tape and deleted the original copy. Poor Norton. He didn't deserve this. Sure, he was a risk taker. He was the kind of guy who'd stick his face on a photocopier and copy it with his eyes open. But he was also the best PostScript hacker I ever met. I just wished he could tell me what went on here. Say, maybe he could. I walked back over to the gurney. The attendant handed me the paperclip.
Thanks, Syntax.
I pulled back the tarp and checked through Norton's pockets.
We already checked them, Jack.
Maybe you did, Sturgis, but you were probably looking for what was there. What's not there is what I was wondering.
Sure, wise guy. Play Sherlock with me.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Norton's antique Newton and the notepad that he always carried around with him were a couple of items that I thought might be missing. I tried to look defeated, but I wasn't sure how convincing I was. One of Sturgis's forensic men came in and started to pack up the Mac. Hey, pal, where are you going with that?
Evidence, my friend.
So I offered to help carry it. And while I was at it, I helped myself to the little 20-gig piggyback drive that was attached to the back of the machine. I popped it in my pocket, and it added little more than a wrinkle to my suit. Ah, the miracle of technology. I gotta take a walk and think about this, Sturgis. You got my number.
Just be sure you hang around, Syntax. We may need you again.
I grabbed a cab and had the driver take a circuitous route home so I could make sure I wasn't being followed. I wasn't. I gave Sturgis an imaginary tip of the hat for the courtesy, but it was still too soon to relax as it turned out. In front of my flat was a gaggle of public works trucks backed up 4 or 5 deep. I stared and saw a gaping hole where my apartment used to be. It looked like whoever had hit the delete key had pretty heavy hand. So, as usually happens when I have no special place to go, I headed for Rick's Club PPS. It was only 11 in the morning, the place would be empty. I gave a respectful nod to Rick's cromolin hanging on the wall and staked out a bar seat with a full-blown Quadra 9000. Quickly fitting the piggyback drive in place and booting up, I began searching the files by date. I looked for the most recent entries and found one for 8:30 that morning. It was in Microsoft Word 12.0. I recognized it immediately as a file I'd been working on the previous evening. I'd left it up on screen so I could continue with it the next day. I scanned down to the bottom of the document and stared at a pile of gibberish. I looked at it for a long time. Then I ordered a drink and looked at it some more. I'd always wondered what I would type if my head were being squeezed into a diskette slot. I would like to think it would be a little more poetic, and I guess he was just scratching away at the keyboard as they did him in. I ordered another drink, then another. After a while, I got kind of philosophical about the whole thing, even creative. I started typing. I realized that my typing wasn't much better than Norton's. Under the effects of the alcohol, I had miskeyed several words. My hands were shifted one key to the right. Hey, if the same thing had happened to Norton, he would have actually typed... not too encouraging after all. I motioned again for the bartender. Okay, so I was no genius. Just some sub-genius who manages to get his friends pixelized, erased, or spindled at every opportunity. I found the taste of self-pity comforting. Why would I choose a career as a PostScript Investigator anyway? Who needed it? I wanted to type a letter of resignation from society, but hell, what use would that be? I'd probably just type it all out one key to the left. Now there was something I could work with. Bad, that was self-explanatory. -8133 was an unknown error generated by a Macintosh computer during printing, probably meaning that he had no idea what was going on. The fact that whoever had done in Norton had mentioned Rick and laughed about his being turned into a cromolin could mean that they were also the ones responsible for Rick's pixelation. With a full head of steam and fueled by a tank full of scotch, I got up to head toward the exit to find some trouble. Just as I was going out the door, I felt a soft hand on my arm and a female voice said,
Mr. Syntax?
I turned, trying to pull away, and looked down. She made me feel as warm and fuzzy as a fistful of Prozac. There was a certain desperation in her tone that drew me in unwillingly. After staring into her large, dark eyes for a few seconds, I felt little inclination to leave. Ever. Call me Jack.
Jack, I really need your help. I have a small design business in town. My old PostScript system was probably good back in the 90s when it came out, but these days I'm afraid half my jobs won't output. It's all I can afford, and besides, I can't stand the thought of getting one of those new synaptic surgical implants, even if they are all the rage.
I liked her approach. It was kind of nice to meet an old-fashioned girl. Most of the ones you met at the clubs these days had an I/O port hidden under their hair.
I've been trying to get this file to print at my local service bureau, but they kept hitting the 8133 error.
I walked her back to the computer, popped in her disk, and commanded a print from the Adobe Illustrator 9.0 file. What you have to do is watch the status bar on the screen really carefully. Before the 8133 error comes up, the status bar will display the actual error in offending command. After a few seconds, the problem came up. Error, limit check, offending command fill. This was an easy fix. To gain a little more control over the PostScript, I resaved the Illustrator 9 file all the way back to 3.2. I checked the file for long complex paths. I went into the Preferences menu and clicked on Split Complex Paths under Save and Print. This would cut the elements down to more manageable bytes. No problem. It's all relative to the resolution.
Thanks, Jack. Maybe we could have lunch sometime.
Gee, since it is already past noon, I was thinking we could go around the corner. I know this quiet little... Hey, where are you going? You got a card? Nice going, Syntax. Maybe you should go home and shower. What home? I looked at the card on the table. I guess it could be a coincidence. I mean, there's lots of people with the name Norton. But I only knew one Norton with a daughter named Jenny. Say, Sam, I gotta use the shower upstairs, okay?
Hey, if Rick don't mind, I got no problem, Jack.
I looked over at Rick's cromolin above the fireplace. I swear he was wearing a wry smile. I grinned back. Don't worry, Rick. use any hot water.